Bluelock is a new fall 2022 soccer anime with a really cool premise and twist on the general soccer anime formula. But would you believe me if I told you this anime embodies the spirit of competition, the World Cup, and Squid Game? It's a really interesting show, and with the World Cup wrapping up in a dramatic fashion this winter, there's some really interesting things I'd like to tell you about, such as what Bluelock is all about, and taking a look at the show's perspective on the World Cup, especially with how the real events overlapped with this show's philosophy. Whether you're up to date on Bluelock and want to hear someone talk about it, or if you're on the fence debating about watching it, this won't really have spoilers beyond the general premise, so please feel free to watch either way. Or if you don't care either way and want to hear about how the hell this relates to the World Cup or Squid Game, you're in luck too. So let's get started and let's have fun. So Bluelock is a show about the top 300 strikers in Japan going to this futuristic, highly advanced facility called Bluelock in which they eat, breathe, and sleep soccer. I don't know how they do this, like if they just dropped out of school temporarily or something, but anyways, these 300 people have been brought to Bluelock by the eccentric genius, fittingly named Ego, with the goal to develop and awaken Japan's future striker, with the final player standing being set to be the new striker for Japan in a future World Cup. Ego, as his name suggests, is intent on creating an athlete who cares only about scoring, and he believes an egoistic striker that can rise above the competition will help Japan secure its first World Cup. The context of Japan in the World Cup is a big factor of the show, and the recent 2022 World Cup is no exception to the points the show makes. Japan has made it out of pools into the final 16 of the last two World Cups, which includes 2022, which is great and all, but they want to aim higher. Japan's style of play is an important factor, as they're seen as a defensive, very team tactic-based squad. So the concept of creating an egoistic striker is really thought-provoking, and goes against everything they've kind of built so far. Even looking at what FIFA said about Japan going into the 2022 World Cup, it's really interesting. I feel I should also mention Bluelock's artist, Yusuke Nomura, designed the jerseys Japan wore this World Cup, so that's really cool. The show also does a good job building up the scale of Ego's actions and Bluelock as a whole, with reporters saying it's crazy and how the dreams of 299 athletes are going to be destroyed in order for this to work. Ego says some really interesting things revolving around the philosophy of playing the striker position, such as that we can train goalies, defenders, and even midfielders, but not strikers. There's a scene in the show where they discuss if soccer players would rather win or score goals, such as, I would rather score a hat trick and my team lose 4-3 rather than winning the game 1-0 on a goal I only assisted with and not scored. They also talk about how Messi is being praised as a striker that's egotistical, but they find this interesting because he's never won a World Cup. And although this show is supposed to take place directly after the 2018 World Cup, you would know if you watch the 2022 World Cup, this isn't true anymore because Messi won the World Cup with Argentina, solidifying his position as one of the potential GOATs of soccer. It's kind of hilarious, like what if Japan won this World Cup? There'd be no point of the show Bluelock anymore, like it would just have to get scrapped. Like, hey, Japan just won with team soccer, we don't need the egotistical striker show anymore. It's interesting the focus is on the World Cup. It's hard to say if the World Cup is even the biggest focus of all players as opposed to club tournaments, but I think in a lot of ways, it's the biggest tournament to players. Messi said he would trade all his titles for even a Copa America, but he's got a World Cup now. There's a quote from the World Cup in 2018, "There will be no moment over the next 4 years where there are more people in the world doing the exact same thing at the same time. Welcome to the greatest collective experience we have as human beings, the World Cup final." The last thing I wanted to quickly mention about the results of the 2022 World Cup before I move on more into Bluelock is Japan's pools round was pretty insane. Like, there was a moment where Japan and Costa Rica would have advanced to the round of 16, which would have been a crazy headline, especially when you consider Germany and Spain, two somewhat recent World Cup winners, were expected to dominate the pool. I predicted Spain and Japan would make it through, which they did, but even then, Japan did it in such a unique way. The two other notable headlines are South Korea beating Portugal to make it out of their pool, and Morocco's great run, becoming the first African nation to make the Final Four. There's probably several interesting headlines that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but I feel bluelock probably planned the release of the World Cup while everyone is thinking about soccer, so it came out at a perfect time. Maybe, just maybe, they wanted to capitalize on the popularity of Squid Game though. You never know. One of the more unique components of the show that separates it from other soccer anime is that the games they play aren't just soccer, but can be more like minigames at times, coupled with the fact that the loser of the challenges will be eliminated from bluelock and will also be banned from playing soccer for Japan's national team. For example, the show starts with a game of tag, with the goal being to not be it when time expires. We see the players kick the ball at each other to not be it at the end, and it becomes a bit savage. So combining the somewhat primal instincts that can awaken within the challengers during these games, with the life or death stakes these players experience, leads to a lot of people saying, "Oh my god, soccer Squid Game." Except in one show, the people actually die, and here their soccer career potentially dies, which is just as bad to most of these young athletes. Although I make the Squid Game jokes, I will say bluelock has been released since 2018, so if anything, Squid Game copied bluelock. Interestingly enough, when Squid Game came out, I just said, oh, it's kaiji for the mainstream. But I don't think if Squid Game ever existed, I would call bluelock a soccer version of kaiji. The element of gambling isn't really involved, but Kaiji's connection to Squid Game is more in the life and death aspects of the game they play, along with the desperation for money the competitors have. Whereas bluelock searches for something deeper than money, and I find it really captivating. It creates an environment separated from society, a place where they can just play soccer all day. They search for the answers of what drives them to compete. I'd also like to quickly say the animation is really great in this show, especially for a sports anime. In my last video talking about the top 10 sports anime of 2022, I talk about a lot of different anime with a big gap in their good and bad animation quality and consistency. So when a sports anime moves, let alone moves well and looks good, it's really refreshing. Bluelock looks really good and is pretty seamless to me, which I think is great for any anime. They use some really clever shots where they zoom out a little further and have CGI models of the characters, or they combine 2D with a little bit of CGI, and I think it's really effective in making a fluid looking show. Another cool thing this show does similar to Squid Game is that every player is labeled by a number. I feel these numbers are more of an important symbol in Squid Game, as it feels as though the contestants were more dehumanized and seen as just a number in a system trying to break free from their capitalist necessities and system of society. God, does that sound pretentious? I don't want that to sound pretentious. Whereas in bluelock, the numbers on their sleeves actually update after every game. This is because these numbers represent their ranks in the facility, and it helps stoke the flames of their passion and hunger to rise up to the top. The ranks in bluelock are also important because higher ranked players get better food and training facilities. For example, a higher ranked player may get steak and gyoza. Dang, that looked good. Whereas a bottom ranked player gets miso soup and pickled radish. Dang, that looked okay, I'm done, I'm sorry. If you score goals next game, your rank will go up, and you might get better food and training. Bluelock really focuses on creating an environment really separated from society, in which characters can hone their ego and mentality into becoming the best soccer player they can be. This is how Bluelock captures the spirit of competition in a great way. As they're all matched up against great players, they seek to find their strengths and weaknesses, but also what motivates them all. Sure, they all want to be great players, but it also turns into why do they want to become great players. We see a lot of the different character motivations to become the best player, whether it be because they were inspired as kids, or they're trying to prove their families wrong, to have autonomy over their fate and future, or just to feel anything at all. This premise brings out part of the beauty of sports anime, and real sports for that matter, and why I love them so much, because it shows the search for a bigger purpose, and how the intrinsic values of these sports embodies the feelings of these players. Combining this with why people love elimination shows like Squid Game, Survivor, total drama island? We may root for characters and hope they make it through that aren't just the protagonist. I love sports anime because I love playing and watching sports, but also because the stakes are high, but more importantly, realistic. We know Goku will save the Earth because if he doesn't, we're not gonna have a show anymore. But something like Blue Lock, it's totally feasible to lose a match, especially when it's presented in a challenge like a round-robin tournament in which every team plays every other team. So the matches are always going to be suspenseful whether they will win or lose, because you never really know what they're gonna throw at you. This is multiplied when you factor in the elimination game aspects, because if you're someone like me, whose favorite character is a side character, this means they could get eliminated at any moment, assuming the protagonist is the last one standing at the end of the show. I'm in the bargaining phase, like, please let Chigiri stay just a little longer, please, he's my favorite character. We all know the protagonist is gonna make it through, at least I'd venture to guess so. So let's quickly talk about Isagi Yoichi real quick, and what separates him from other soccer players and sports protagonists. So, Isagi Yoichi is a Japanese high schooler who plays the striker position. It's important to note the show starts with him in a match, dribbling up the field about to take a shot to tie the game. But remembering soccer is a team sport, he decides to pass the ball to his teammate, who ends up missing the shot, eliminating their team from the playoffs. I think he's an interesting striker because he's portrayed to have no real remarkable abilities, soccer technique-wise or physically, being a bit smaller, weaker, and slightly slower than most others. However, his secret weapon seems to be smelling a goal, which is a bit vague, but does provide for interesting matches. Now I should quickly mention, we did get another soccer anime this year, Aoashi, in which the protagonist's whole deal is he can basically see the field from a bird's eye view when he gets in the zone, and he can recall an amazing amount of information about the previous match, such as where every player was running and whatnot. So to have two anime in the same year where the protagonist basically visualizes where everyone is like this can be seen as a bit similar, but I think Blue Lock differentiates itself well with the more offense-oriented and egoistic philosophies the players try to adopt. So Aoashi's bird's eye view is more for playing a complete team game. Blue Lock uses a similar vision to sense a goal, kinda more at any cost, and to disregard everything except scoring, fine dining, and breathing. Isagi is a bit thought-provoking in the sense that unlike any of the other strikers at the facility, he isn't adverse to passing, at least initially. He senses goals almost subconsciously and can pass the ball to teammates for goals when he's in the zone. But the show does a good job of making these goals almost seem like a loss for him, like the opponent Barou telling Isagi he has no talent and doesn't belong here if he hesitates and passes. Even though it led to a goal, it's still a loss. Symbolically, of course. The show kind of pushes four main characters of the cell block Isagi is in. Besides himself, there's Bachira, who's pretty eccentric. His special ability is dribbling, and he trusts Isagi immediately, even passing him the ball in a game of tag, which when you think about it is a really big deal, considering Isagi could have just intentionally missed the pass, and Bachira would still be it, probably getting eliminated. But he trusts Isagi's competitive spirit and senses something deeper within him, so he knew Isagi would catch the ball and continue the game of tag, for example. He says he plays soccer because of this beast inside him that he can hear. It's like a persona maybe, I don't know. But I don't really have much to say about this. I don't know what I can say at this point. There's Kunigami, who's really big and muscular and has powerful shots. His motivation for playing soccer is that he looked up to them as superheroes as a kid and wants to continue this cycle to inspire future kids. Finally, there's Chigiri, who's my favorite character of the show. He's a bit reserved and sassy, but he's a funny character. He's really fast but also recovered from a really bad injury and fears that he could re-injure his leg at any time, preventing him from ever playing soccer again. So his character somewhat revolves around his speed and throwing caution to the wind to pursue his dream. So to sum it up, Blue Lock is a fantastic anime, my top anime of 2022. As a follow-up on my last video about my top 2022 sports animes, I would say you should watch this anime even if you don't like soccer but are a fan of sports and competing. This show is a testament to the nature of competing as we search further inside ourselves for what motivates us. It's a really simple yet deep question that many people struggle to answer. answer. If you play sports, currently playing a sport, or training for one, if you close your eyes and think what's your goal, is it winning a high school tournament, making the starting lineup, playing in college, or even professionally, or even just becoming the best version of yourself? Ask yourself why, and then as a further extension, then what? That's a powerful question I never really thought of until, God, this sounds so corny, but I don't care. I'm corny and I'm proud. Until I played Pokemon Black and White, and my favorite character Sharon talks to the champion of the region and tells him about how he wants to become the champion of the region, to which the champion Alder asks, okay, then what? And Sharon had no answer. And that's such an important question to ask yourself that always sticks with me. I want to make the starting lineup of my basketball team. Then what? If you don't think of the then what, you may just shrug your shoulders and say, well, that's it. I'd be satisfied. Becoming the best version of yourself seems to be something the show suggests, and I think it's embodied best through the protagonist Isagi. He's envious of some of the other characters' motivations, like seeing players as superheroes, but he doesn't have some profound reason. Soccer didn't save his life or something, he just has this inner competitive spirit that this facility has awakened in him, and it's a really nice touch that the anime starts with him passing up on an opportunity to score a goal, because we see him do a play that was best for the team, but they still lost, and now Bluelock is trying to destroy everything he knows about playing soccer as a team and to focus on scoring only. I'd love to know your thoughts on Bluelock so far. Who is your favorite character and why? As I mentioned, mine's Chigiri, so fingers crossed he stays as long as possible. Thanks for watching, I'll talk to you later. Bye.